All right, quick question. What's up?
I'm doing my render now.
Mm-hmm.
In Newport. And can I start it over? Because it took all, it's like it's rotating and everything. But I don't see the rest of the planets now.
Yeah.
This way because of where I got my camera.
I'm guaranteed that's where it is. Yep. Okay. So today, our adventure in animation continues. Over the last couple of weeks, we've been spending a significant amount of time just kind of getting comfortable with the animation engine inside of Modo. Well, today that challenge is going to increase ever so slightly, and we're going to start applying a lot of what we've talked about last week into some skill and some artful creations inside of the animation space. We really have two big missions that we're striving to achieve. So here we are on week 3. Here's our 2 assignments this week. The Motobot landing, which is going to be a creative application of everything that we've talked about when it comes to object level animation. Your job, and I've provided you with an asset, as we were exploring earlier. I didn't make this asset. It's been around the Moto community for a long, long time. Your job is to create an animation where this little robot, helicopter, spaceship thingamajig lands. Okay, we'll come back to that here in a minute. It's going to allow us to really reinforce the idea of arcs, the principle of timing, establishing a good sense of weight. These are important ideas that we should be applying and infusing in every single animation, even one as simple as a little robot landing on its own little helipad. Okay, so we'll come back to that a little bit later. It's going to be pretty fun. This is going to be a legit render, okay, just so you know. This is going to take some time. So I'm going to give you some time in class today to start chewing away on this. And I don't know why my videos aren't loading. I got a broken link, but I used to have, excuse me, I used to have a good little example file of what it could potentially look like. There's, what, 26 of us in here? We're going to have 26 different animations next week, which is going to be pretty exciting. And I would like to look at your projects next week, the renders, and take a look at how you guys have chosen to animate your little Motobot landing inside of our 3-dimensional scene. To help us out, to help us get to that final result, I've created another fun little lab assignment. It's called the Flying Saucer Slalom, and we'll start playing around with this here in a minute. And this Flying Saucer Slalom will help us kind of understand or continue to reinforce keyframing and keyframe management. Okay? The past couple assignments, the keyframes that we've been applying inside of our animations have relatively been simple. With something like a slalom, we're going to have a spaceship coming in and out and weaving between all these wonderful little pylons. It'd be better if they were pythons, by the way. No, the pylons. Little animated snakes like chomping at this saucer as it flies by. That'd be cool. Anyways, the number of keyframes and how we position our keyframes on our timeline is really ultimately going to give us the result that we're after.
Okay, so in this process, do you think we can make like a flying saucer fly kind of wacky-like, or?
Sure, yeah. Generally speaking, and we're going to talk about this here in a minute, it's important that we're recreating and striving to create the illusion of weight, right? So if your flying saucer is wacky and it's going all over the place, you've just created an unbelievable animation, right? And that's mission failure, okay? Animation needs to be very selfless, right? We're not making this for our own entertainment. We're fundamentally making it for someone else, okay? Our mission is to showcase this one little moment in time. We're choosing to share this little flying saucer going through these little pylons for a reason, okay? And we've got to figure out what that reason is. Arcs, timing, the illusion of weight is going to help us create a more believable animation, right? That's our mission as animators. That's our union card. That's what we're here to do. We're here to make people believe that this little flying saucer model is actually a real spaceship choosing to fly, around the environment. Okay. In addition, we're also going to talk about some really neat additions to our animation engine. We'll talk about motion paths, start getting which will help us visualize the path that our object is taking inside of our 3-dimensional scene. We'll also talk about the role and the critical importance of camera blocking, okay? And we'll also talk about some keyframe management techniques throughout the afternoon that will help us get the result that we want, okay? At the conclusion of this, I even put it in the requirements, we need to make it epic and awesome, okay? No more boring animations, okay? Boring, unentertaining animations need not apply. We are here to entertain and communicate. So I want you guys to put some energy and some thought into your animation to ensure we're getting what we're getting, okay? Or we're getting what we're after. Excuse me, that didn't make any sense. We're getting what we're getting. That was a silly comment. Yeah? You got it. Yep, that's the goal. That's the goal. This one, we're not going to render, actually, okay, which is going to be pretty neat. We're going to do something called an OpenGL Playblast inside of Modo, which will help us export and get our animations out of Modo and into a QuickTime file that we then can play externally from the app. Not everything needs to be a full-blown render. A lot of our lab assignments, these little playblasts are just fine, okay? Because we can see the animation, we can see them being played back at their original frame rate, and it goes a little bit faster too. Because what's important is the animation. All right, you guys ready for this? So I think what we're going to start with is the flying saucer. So let's download this thing. Take a look at the project file. All right. Okie dokie. Let's take a look at what we got here. So, of course, we have the flying saucer. And I want to change my viewport shading style from shaded to default. Okay, here's our little set. And I think there's a little bit of a bug in here. And for that, I do apologize. You can delete this shadow catcher item. Don't need that anymore. Because the set really is what's most important. Because this has all the little pylons in it. And we have our little flying saucer. This is going to be our character, the thing that we're going to be animating exclusively in our lab assignment, and ultimately will help us figure out, what our movement's going to be. Okay? Yeah.
What was the way to sort of get the camera to not wind up at sort of wacky angles?
Trackball rotation. So if you put your cursor in the center of the viewport, hit the O key. It's under the drawing and control section of your viewport properties. And it's way down at the bottom of the list, trackball rotation. Now here's a good power user trick, one that I would definitely suggest you employ, especially if you know Likey the trackball rotation, and I know Likey the trackball rotation. It just doesn't work for me. From time to time, and I mean once in a blue moon. Oh, didn't we just have a blue moon? So earlier this week, I used trackball rotation once, right? So for 9 times out of 10, 9.9 times out of 10, I want it off. And I want it off in every single viewport, right? Because right now what we've done is we've only changed the trackball rotation parameters for just this viewport in the modeling tab. I want trackball rotation to be off everywhere. So there is a global set, a global preference that we can disable in this particular situation. So if you cruise over to the black Modo icon, and open your global Modo preferences, it's under the OpenGL section of your Modo preferences, okay? OpenGL, and specifically, where is it? I think it's at the bottom. Yeah, under viewport rotation, let's just turn off trackball rotation. And there's one other thing that we should turn off, and it's say override viewport level trackball rotation. If you do this, every single viewport in the entire application will honor the trackball rotation parameter that you just set, okay? Which is what I want. I want every viewport to disable trackball rotation. So that's the global set. Just make sure that that is off. Yeah.
For some reason, it doesn't show up on mine.
Go into the OpenGL section of your Modo preferences. Yep, it's on the list under the displays section. Excuse me. All right, so I've navigated over to the animation layout, and I need to start blocking out a couple things here. When we're starting to animate a complex movement, like our little, yeah, Hannah, go ahead.
I was zooming way out, so I was trying to focus to get it on here. So what?
What's the question?
What did you just say? I'm sorry.
To globally
Oh, just turn off the trackball rotation? Yeah, go to the Moto preferences. So Moto preferences. And then it's under the OpenGL section, kind of in the middle of the list. Yep. And then specifically, just turn off trackball rotation. The one that says trackball rotation. Yeah. And then what I would do is that I would enable override viewport level trackball rotation. That way, every viewport is going to adopt the parameter we just set. Yeah, get rid of your shadow catcher. Yeah, that shadow catcher is going to cause some problems for us. That's just an error. Yeah. Go ahead, Tom.
For some reason, when I was trying to look this up, this happened. Oh,
You just lifted it.
I don't know what just happened. It just like, the rest of it just went up. Well, the bottom half.
Well, it was underneath the plane, right?
Yeah, well, I don't know what happened.
Okay. I don't know either. All right, so let's start figuring this out. Okay. When we start an animation, we need to have kind of a battle plan. Okay. We need to have some sort of vision in our mind as to what this movement really is going to be. Right. I always love to say that when it comes to animation, there's a certain degree of projection and pretending involved. We have to see it up here, okay, in our imagination before we can ever make it materialize in front of us. Okay. I think that's an important idea that you need to drive home. The computer is not going to help you, okay? In all honesty, it's only going to put up roadblocks to make it more and more difficult. So if you don't know what it is that you're trying to create, the computer doesn't know either, right? The computer is just a tool, so you got to have a vision for it. You have to have some sort of battle plan in your brain before we even start plotting out some keyframes, okay? Now for us, let's see, my battle plan, and let's just prototype this real fast, okay? Let's think through it in the easiest way we possibly can, which is just kind of chatting about it, right? I think for me, what I'm looking to do is maybe have my, here's an idea. Maybe I have my spaceship fly off or fly in from off screen, right? I'll have the camera maybe positioned towards the front of my little slalom course. We'll see the spaceship fly in, and then we'll start seeing him serpentine through all the different pylons, okay? Yeah?
How about like if it were just to spin around, usually fly past the pillars and then come back, well, sideways?
Yeah, I think that's a great way of working. Yeah, I mean, it could like bank as it goes through all of the turns and stuff. That's a great idea.
It turns like
Yeah.
this, and then you come back with.
I love it. I think it's an awesome idea. Then maybe right at the end of the shot and at the animation, the camera is like the spaceship just flies right by camera off screen. Okay, so we'll see it come in. It'll serpentine through all the different pylons, and then at the very end, it's going to make a big arc in front of the camera and leave. Okay, that's the plan. Okay, that's a pretty good start. At the very least, I have a rough idea that I can start keyframing inside of Moto. Okay, now when we're starting this kind of big picture plan here. We always want to. We're always going to end in a place that's very, very different from where we begin. But if you don't have a beginning, you're up a creek. You need to find a beginning. Okay? It's okay to change your idea. It's okay to change your plan. It's part of the process. But let's start prototyping what this could look like. Now, the first thing that we need to do, excuse me, the first thing that we need to do is compose our shot. We need to figure out what the boundaries of our frame is going to be, okay? And then we're going to animate to just what the camera sees, right? What this is not, in the classical sense of animation, is like a game engine, where we just kind of animate something and let our audience pick and choose their own perspective of this movement. In the traditional cinema world, we get to choose what our audience is going to see. That's why we're here, right? So we need to figure out what the boundaries of our frame are, or is first, and then we animate for just what the camera sees, okay? Because if the camera doesn't see it, guess what? The camera doesn't see it, and neither will your audience. So why are you animating something that your audience is never going to see, right? Seriously, it really is that easy, okay? Don't waste your time animating something that your audience is fundamentally not going to see. So we want to start with that composition first, okay? So let's figure what that looks like, okay? Let's figure out how we want to compose a shot and start figuring out exactly how all of this is going to work. So first and foremost, let's practice our technique. I want to make sure that I establish my sequence settings first, early on, okay? This is part of the muscle memory that we live within. At the very least, just change your scene start and scene end to start with 1, right? Because there are no frame zeros. There's always frame 1, okay? Let's see. In my mind, yeah, let's make this like a 6-second shot, okay? 6 times 24. Does anyone want to take a stab at it? Here, you don't have to think hard, okay? I always love asking those math questions, and I see like the little gerbils of your brain like starting to spin on their wheels. I'm like, what is it? And the smoke comes out. Here, make it easy for you, okay? So go to your notification center. Great trick, right? Yeah, there's a calculator. So is it 6 times 24? Bloop, 144 frames. Okay, that's what we're after. That's a good starting point. Okay. All right, so we've established the total duration. It may go longer, but I don't think it's going to be any shorter than that. And now let's start figuring out and composing what the camera's going to see, and then we're going to animate to that. Okay. Now here's a great little trick, because ultimately this is our camera view. Okay. If we change our OpenGL viewport to look through the camera's viewfinder, okay, we can see pretty quickly what our camera sees. Okay. Cool. However, this view is not a work view, okay? In the animation kind of pipeline, we want to make sure that we have our camera set, and it's just going to be kind of a static window. It's a viewfinder into what the camera is going to take a picture of. But then we need to have an additional viewport that allows us to spin around, work in perspective, make selections. That's really kind of our utility viewport, right? The one that we're going to be working in and out of often, right? So here's my power user trick, one that I do all the time, and it's something that's one of the reasons I love working in Moto. The interface is plastic. We can bend the interface to do a number of different things to give us the workflow that we're after, okay? Now, I want to split my viewport. I want to have 2 independent views of my 3-dimensional scene, and to do that quite easily, I'm going to go to the top, to my little gold dot, okay? This gold dot is going to allow us to do a number of different things. However, if we hold down the control key and then drag to the right, watch what happens to that viewport. It splits it horizontally. Okay? Now, it'll split it once you mouse up, by the way. Okay? So the gold dot is going to split just that one viewport, okay, into 2. It's going to subdivide it. Now, what do you think is going to happen if I was to drag down on that gold dot? Yeah, control, drag down is going to split it vertically. Okay? So we can go in and continue to subdivide our interface to get as many crazy views as we want, right? Okay, I can have this one, this one be the top, this one be the right, this one be perspective, this one, I can do whatever I want, right? Here's the top. So we can have as many different viewports and as many different views of our scene that we'd like. Now, I have what, 1, 2, 3, 4, I got 5. I just want 2, okay? So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to remove a viewport. Just return to that gold dot. But this time, don't left click on it. Right click on the gold dot. You'll get a contextual menu and simply choose delete, okay? Deleting the menu, or excuse me, deleting the viewport will, as one might imagine, bloop, make it go away. Now there is a pretty big difference between delete and detach. Has anyone discovered what detach does? Yeah, it kind of pops off that viewport into its own floating palette. Now, some folks love this, okay? Let me show you what I'm talking about. It's going to pop it off, boop, and now it's its own floating palette that I can put wherever I'd like, okay? Let's get rid of that guy, and I'm going to get rid of this guy too. All right, and we're up and running. Because now we have the 2 views of our scene that we're ultimately after. As I mentioned before, it's important that we're always aware of what the camera can see, because at the end of the day, this is our takeaway, right? What the camera renders is physically what our audience is going to be interacting with. So it's critical, if not the most important thing, to see what the camera sees all the time, okay? All right. Okie dokie. So let's explore some camera placement. Now, I always try to get a scene that has a tremendous amount of depth in it. Something like that. That's pretty cool. Here we can do this. We'll do all Michael Bay and look up at everything, right? He does that. He puts the camera on the ground all the time, right? And then he tilts up, and it makes all of his actors and actresses look like action heroes all the time. Well, because I guess he's probably trying to make them look like action heroes, right? That's kind of an old school trick. It makes people feel like they're bigger than they actually are, right? More epic and awesome. Huh?
Larger than life.
Yeah. And in most moments with Michael Bay films, unneededly larger than life, right? It's like, oh, it's the dude from Burger King. Let's make him into an action hero. Oh, okay, we don't need to do that. Everything is Michael Bay. It's like in slow-mo with an explosion behind them. And like seemingly, the dude has like an infinite supply of slow-mo helicopters, right? Because every shot, there's like a boom, 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 slow-mo helicopter in the background. And the Burger King guy handing someone a milkshake, right? That's a Michael Bay shot. Anyways, I digress. This is my shot. I'm pretty happy with it. But we can make it a little bit better. When we're composing shots, we absolutely want to make sure that we're producing a foreground, a middle ground, and a background, okay? So I always like to put things at angles. It gives us a nice sense of depth with inside the scene. If you think about it, over here in our 3D view, all of these pylons, they're in a perfect straight line, okay? By putting our render camera at an angle to that straight line, now we can see the action way over here. We'll be able to see the spaceship flying in and out and serpentine and slaloming through all the pylons, and eventually making its big epic, spin right across the frame. Understanding what the render camera is going to see from the beginning is going to help you animate. It makes the entire animation process go a lot faster and easier, okay? Because then, I mean, how many times have you guys done this if you've animated before, right? You're animating, and then you go, oh, I probably should figure out what the render camera sees, and then all of a sudden you have to reanimate everything, right? Because you didn't take into account what the render was going to look like. If we start this process at the beginning, it's easier. I saw a question. I want to make sure I get the questions answered. Yeah? So I'm just using my viewport navigation controls in my camera view to change the composition of my shot. So I use like zoom, option left mouse button, option shift, option control to move position and zoom my way to success. All right, something like that's pretty good. The other thing that we want to be very mindful of as much as we can are the rule of thirds, right? It's important that we compose our shots in a way that draws focus to natural zones inside of the frame itself, okay? Now, excuse me, we have an excellent set of negative space up here. If you look at this top third, look at this gigantic zone of negative space at the top of my shot. That is an opportunity for us to fill that negative space with some content. So where am I going to enter my actor from? Yeah, top right, okay? It's a perfect opportunity for me to fly my spaceship in, right? We want to put something in that zone because our audience is already preconditioned to look in that area. Happy accident, man, right? Totally like a subscriber to like the Bob Ross like mentality, like the school of animation. Just like, hey, man, it's now, you guys like Bob, you guys know Bob Ross, right? The hippie dude with the afro that like does paintings on PBS. I love Bob Ross. Bob Ross is the man, okay? In all honesty, I used to watch The Joy of Painting when it was on PBS way back in the early 80s. For me, in all honesty, that was my first exposure to layers, because that's really what Bob Ross does, right? He starts at the background, and then he draws layers to the foreground. It's not magical at all, but he's so calming, right? His big hair. Oh, this is a happy tree, right? He makes it look so easy, and he's just like, hey, we're just making a painting. That's all we're doing today, is we're just making a painting. I like to have that attitude. We're just making an animation today. That's all we're doing, okay? We're not curing cancer or sending someone to the moon. We're just making an animation, all right? All right. Now, in my imagination, this is now locked down, okay? I'm not touching that viewport again, right? I don't want to accidentally mess up my composition, right? Now, if you wanted to, you certainly could go in and physically lock down the camera item to ensure that you don't accidentally make a mistake. Okay, that's very much a feature of our animation pipeline, and I know some folks, they actually do this. Okay, especially if you're working at a big animation studio, the director and the cinematographers of the show, they go in, they camera block everything, and then you don't touch the camera, right? Because that's exactly what the camera composition that the director wants to be, right? So if you'd like to do that, open up your item list. I'm expanding and collapsing the item list with that button there. And then, of course, naturally, here's the camera item. Right-clicking on it will bring up and open a series of properties, and down towards the bottom, of course, is lock and unlock. Now, you got to be aware that you're doing this, right? Only you can prevent forest fires. Luckily for us, we get a little padlock icon next to the item now. That didn't used to happen. There didn't used to be a padlock there, so I'm happy that they at least visualize that this item's been kind of locked down. Now, I can't move the camera. It's transform channel. So I'm left-clicking and dragging in this viewport now, and I can't do anything to my camera. It's locked. Okay? It's a great way to work, to preserve the work that you've already set up. Excuse me. All right. So now that I've established my camera composition, let's go in and start figuring out what our animation is going to look like. Animation is a process of slow passes, right? Our goal here is to not figure out and to not animate this beautifully and perfectly initially, right? We're going to land at that over at the final result at the end of this process. But we need to start blocking out the key poses, the key frames, right? And then figuring out how fast we're going to transition between those key frames. Once we're happy with that, then we'll go on to the next stage of animation. I always work, and I know a lot of folks that do this exact same thing. We keyframe in channel groups. I'm going to keyframe just the position first. Make sure I'm happy with that. And then once I'm happy with the keyframe timing of the position channels, then I'm going to go in and keyframe the rotation. It focuses us just on one channel set, which is a great way of working. Okay? If you make it kind of methodical, animation is not as bad as I think a lot of folks turn it out to be. Okay, so let's start working here. I'm going to grab my flying saucer and hit the Y key to enter into the Atom Transform tool, and let's start figuring out where this thing is going to be. Okay. Now, I'm just exploring this space at the moment. Yeah, there we go. All right. If you've taken GCOM 400, and many of you have, we know at the foundation of all animation resides curves, arcs, right? We love you the arcs. We want arcs everywhere, okay? Arcs are the reason to animate, okay? Nothing in our world animates in a straight line, okay? Nothing animates in a straight line. Diego, hold on 2 seconds. Open up your item list, Diego. And delete the shadow catcher in the item list. That'll get rid of that black flickering thing. You too, Wandy. Okay? Go into your item list and delete the shadow catcher.
Oh, delete it.
Yeah, get rid of the shadow catcher. If you have the shadow catcher in your scene, get rid of it. Don't need it. Okay, so with that said, arcs. Everything moves on a curved path. Nothing moves in a straight line. Nothing moves in a straight line. Okay, so we need to make sure that we're using this principle and applying it into every single animation that we do, right? So let's figure out what this is going to look like for a second here, okay? I wish I was taller. I need to get a big stick, right? Because I think for me, in order to make things move in an arc and not a straight line, I need to maybe have it kind of spin like this, okay? So it's going to start off screen, but then it's going to arc this way and then start going like this. Okay? Yeah, that could be kind of cool. That could be kind of cool. Let's start fleshing this out. Now, one of the kind of the misnomers that people bring to the party is that we need to have the focal point inside the framing of our composition at all times. No, the flying saucer can leave for a second. Just don't make it leave for too long. There's a question?
Yeah.
So
I'm having the same
Okay, so go ahead and transform it, Chris.
Okay, I don't mind.
Here we go. Move it. Yeah, okay. Chris is student number 1. Check this out. This is actually something that's really important to see. Chris has done a double transform. All right, Chris. Yeah. See what's happening here? He's moving the saucer. However, the little hatch on the bottom, all the little rivets that go, they're supposed to be light bulbs, I think, are going around the saucer are also moving at the exact same time, okay? The reason that's happening is that all 3 of those items are selected. If Chris was to expand his item list, go ahead and click on the little disclosure arrow. Yeah, see how every single item in here is selected? Just grab the topmost one, flying saucer. There we go. Now transform your spaceship. Yeah. Yeah. It happens, just you've selected, somehow you probably double clicked on it, which I think selects the entire hierarchy. We just need a single left click on our saucer. That's called a double transform. All right. Is it me or is it warm in here? It's warm. I'm going to open up the door. Yeah.
Which button? Which button doing?
For what?
To get it to
So have it animate through the pylons?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to get to that in here in a second. Okay. It's a glorious day. It's one of those afternoons where it's almost criminal to be inside, right? I should just cancel class. We should all just go to the park. I wish very much that we could just go animate over in the park, right? I don't know about you guys, but it's a much better place than being stuck in here. Let's go to the zoo. It's such a wonderful park atmosphere. I love being so close to the zoo. Fairy Tale Town's fun too. Even if you're an adult, Fairy Tale Town's fun. It is. Get the Crooked Mile, right? Anyways, all right. Clearly, I have kids. All right, so let's start plotting out the path that we want our little flying saucer to go along, okay? And I'm going to do this simply. Position channels first, and then I'm going to time everything out for position, and then I'm going to go in and start doing rotation. Don't try to do everything all at once. You're going to confuse your brain. The results are not going to be great, and it's going to take about 10 times longer. This is an art form of passes, okay? The first pass, position. Now, at this stage of the game, I'm not really too concerned about keyframe timing down in my timeline. I just need to get the keyframes. With the idea, on the next path, I'll go and start moving the keyframes and changing the speed of my animation. So let's just define quickly what that animation is going to be. When you're working with, excuse me, when you're animating, make sure that you're always using the item transform tool, the Y key, okay? We work in item mode. We have an item-based animation engine. We want to work with the item transform tool, the Y key. Also gives you the ability to move, scale, and rotate simultaneously. Okay, so I want my little guy here to start off frame. And this is why having the camera view established early on is so important, because now I'm just going to move. Let's see, where do I want? I want my guy to enter in maybe up here. Okay? Okay? So let's lock in, keyframe just the position channels. Okay? Keyframe all 3 of the position channels. I did that by clicking quickly on this little icon here. This will select, this will key, so I can select all my rotation channels. It actually fires off the rotate tool as well. All right, so there's my first keyframe. Now I'm just going to go arbitrarily 10 frames forward. This is just me. I just put 10 frames in between all of my keyframes just to give me a little bit of white space, some visual space in between my keyframes. Helps me understand what I've locked in. All right, so what's the next pose? Where do I want my guy to go next? I don't know. Let's figure this out. just because we're working with a computer doesn't mean we get to walk away from our pose-to-pose style of animation. Let's see, maybe the next major pose is over here. So he's basically going to fly down. And I can go back in and get that moving along in an arc here in a second. You know what? I think I'm already going to change that first keyframe. Seeing what it looks like, I want to move him over significantly. There we go. Now the angle of attack is a little bit smaller. Okay. Okay, so I'll go to frame 20. And where do I want my guy to go next? Well, let's figure this out. I think really where I want him to go next is kind of like over here, the midpoint. Now, I can see already that I'm having some problems capturing the animation with the current camera composition. Another reason why it's so critical to have that camera view up and open and available to us while we animate, because now's a great opportunity for me to make a change. Excuse me. So I'm going to unlock my camera. And let's do this. I'm going to give myself a little bit more screen real estate down here, over here in the back. So I can, yeah. There we go. There we go. I'm liking that. Okay, that's another keyframe down. Well, where are we going to go next? Let's figure this out. Now, this is why our camera blocking is so important, because now I get to figure out specifically in Z space, or excuse me, along the x-axis, where I want my keyframe to be. I don't want to have a keyframe where my spaceship is behind one of the pylons, right? We animate to what the camera sees, not to what the scene sees, right? That's looking pretty good. Let's go to frame 30. Maybe on frame 30, yeah, let's see. Maybe he goes up. Let's be creative. Frame 40, this is where it gets to be a whole bunch of fun. And I think I'm just going to do maybe one more. All right. So if you look at what I've done here on my little timeline, okay, I've just gone ahead and just kind of prototyped what potentially this could look like, okay? Notice my keyframe positions on all this. At this stage of the game, I'm not thinking about timing, okay? I'm just thinking about, this is kind of like I'm just trying to figure out how my animation is going to work. The when and the timing, the specifics of it, we're going to get to that here in a minute, okay? But now at the very least, I've locked in all the poses, and I'm ready to start editing. I'm ready to start looking at what this is going to potentially flesh out into. Okay, let's play it. Let's see what we got. It's going to go by very fast. All right. Comes down. So I think I goofed on that keyframe. It's in the wrong position. Actually, you know what? I'm going to roll with it. Why not? Make a couple small tweaks. Now I'm being an animator. Oh, maybe on this one, it's a little bit lower in frame, almost as if he's hitting the ground. And then he races up at an angle. That might be kind of fun. Okay, so my angle was a little too steep. Let's bring it down some. Yeah, what's up?
What do you think if I were to like make the flying saucer rise from the ground while it kind of wobbles? Is that good detail or?
Yeah, sure. I think that sounds good. I mean, if that's what you want, there's no reason not to have it, right? Okay. So what's cool about this is that I can continue to prototype my animation without a lot of stuff in there. I can see pretty quickly that I've gone way, way too high on that keyframe, and maybe I need to bring it over a little bit. That feels a little bit more natural. Yeah, that works, okay? I'm just trying to figure out what the movement generally is, right? That's the hard part, just materializing an idea.
Is there a way to parent the camera onto the flying saucer so it's from the perspective of the saucer?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. If you want to parent an object or an item to another item, now I'm going to stop my animation and let's just do this. I'm going to add another camera. Call this saucer cam. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just pairing it. Excuse me. I need to get the flying saucer, or excuse me, this camera in the exact same spot as the flying saucer. Okay. Because right now it's right down there. I need it way over there. So I'll have to do maybe like a little match position. If you go into the rigging tool set, the setup tab, that will allow you to do that pretty quickly. Now I'm doing stuff that I'm going way off the reservation here. Let's do match position. There we go. I love match position. Because now my flying saucer is in the exact same spot as my camera's in the exact same spot as my flying saucer. I want to move it up a little bit so it's not like in the flying saucer. And then to parent it, it's real easy. You just drag and drop. Boom, like that. Now, wherever my flying saucer goes, my little camera's going to go along for the ride too. Just because I'm curious, I'm looking in saucer cam now. Yeah, that gives me a headache. But it is doable. All right, let's get rid of saucer cam.
So if you want to do like a roller coaster ride, you just parent that with the roller coaster. Go down.
You can watch it. Yeah. Those videos on YouTube are terrifying, right? Where they put like a GoPro on like a mountain biker going down like a cliff. They're exhilarating and terrifying all at the exact same time.
Even VR, you play that?
Yeah.
Roller coaster ride?
Oh, you know, it's immersive. It tricks you. I remember I was this was 3 or 4 years ago now. The initial Oculus Rift demo was a roller coaster, and it was a roller coaster through a big castle. And say again? It was like a Minecraft environment. Yeah, and it was nuts, right? Because you go click, 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 click up to the top of the first hill. And I remember with the headsets on, the earphones on and stuff, I was like, oh, this is cool, right? I was like, oh, I can look down, and I'm looking down off the roller coaster. This is neat. I can look around. Oh, there's a castle. There's something else. I mean, it was cool, right? Until I went over the first hill, and I watched myself go over the first hill, and my stomach turned. It like flipped. And in that moment, I went, whoa, 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 whoa. I know I'm sitting at a desk. I can feel my feet on the ground. I can feel my fingers on a keyboard and mouse, but my brain just thought that I was on a roller coaster. And for me personally, I was like, that's it. That's what we're going for. That's immersion, right? Hopefully VR will survive and we'll continue to get those immersive things. Anyways, back to animating. We've gone off on a tangent. All right. So I'm really happy with what I've created so far. And I think so far is such a wonderful, wonderful word to put in that sentence. So far. This is not it. We're nowhere close to being done, but at least we have a prototype.
What's the hotkey when you have an object selected, essentially to snap to bring the camera to it?
Shift A. A for autofit. If you just do A, it's gonna put the entire scene in the viewport. And if something's selected, Shift A will focus on the selected object. All right. So now that I've gone in and I've flushed out all of my initial keyframes, now I'm thinking about speed. Now I want to go through and start fundamentally shifting all of these keyframes down in my timeline to get the speed reproduction that I'm after. So that's like step 2 in this. And luckily for us, the dope sheet just does such a great job at allowing us to go in and very quickly start moving these keyframes around. That's the whole kind of purpose of the dope sheet. It's custom made for this part of our animation process. Okay? It's nice to see that we have tools that actually reinforce a sequential step of the animation pipeline. Now, what I would highly, highly, highly recommend is that you have this R turned on in your dope sheet. With that R enabled, it allows us to do ripple edits on your dope sheet. See how I select keyframe number 2 and all of its neighbors after shift down in our timeline. That makes editing really, really easy. It should default to on, but make sure it is, in fact, on, okay? Because with it off, then we're just going to move this one keyframe around and nothing else moves. All right, so now I'm experimenting, and I'm only going to experiment with with 2 or 3 keyframes at a time. If you just want to focus, just adjust that one section and then move on to the next section, okay? Work in blocks of keyframes. For me, I do 2 or 3. I focus on 2 or 3 keyframes because that's about as much as my little pea brain can handle. So now I'm looking at speed. How long do I want it to go? Boo! Maybe a second for him to come into frame. And I play it. That's too fast. Let's do 2 seconds. There we go. Okay? That's okay. That's better. People don't follow things when they're moving very fast. Believe it or not, one of the big sins in animation is that our movements are too fast, okay? We want to slow things down.
I just wanted to show you what I did so far.
Okay? All right, good. Keep going. At the end of this, we're going to want them slalomly through, which will be fun. All right. Looks like I have the visibility of my center points enabled in this viewport. Hit the O key to bring open my viewport properties, and I'm going to turn off show pivots to none. That way I just see my little guy. All right. Let's select him once more. Get to work. Okay. So here he is. It takes 2 seconds to get over there. And I think I am, make sure we're not in a flying saucer, and somehow I ended up in a saucer, or in a pylon, excuse me. Let's just rekey that for a second. Okay, so now my brain is looking at the keyframe that's on frame 48 to the next keyframe. I'm just going to focus on those 2 and figure out the timing within those 2, okay? If I try to do them all at once, trust me, you're going to get confused. Okay, it's a little too fast for me. Another great way of working, a great way of focusing, is to change the current start, the scene, no, I had it right, the current start and current end indicators by left-clicking and dragging on this bar. So maybe I only want to look at the keyframes on frame 48 through 60. So I'll do it 60 on this side. Yeah, let's see what we get. Yeah, maybe a little too slow. Let's actually move that keyframe over to 60. Or too fast, excuse me, I misspoke. animation is an organic process, okay? Don't rush yourself through it. Take your time. Now, I'm real happy with what I've done from 48 to 64. Let's keep cruising on now, because now we're going over there. Maybe a couple small adjustments. An experiment. Push your keyframe out 4 frames. Play it back. If it doesn't work, move it back. Now's a good time to make some micro adjustments to see what it's going to look like and see what the sense of speed is going to be in its lowest kind of bare bone forms. Because once we start putting in the next pass of animation, it's going to get complex. So now's the perfect chance to experiment. Yeah. Now, as our actor gets closer to the camera, how should he or she's speed change? It's going to get slower, okay? As it gets closer, it's going to get slower to us, okay? And we want it to be slow, or we want to make it, appear to be a little bit slower, okay? That way we can see everything. All right. So we're going that way. Now, one of the things that I'm having a real hard time of at the moment is really understanding the flight path of my little guy, okay? Of my, excuse me, of my spaceship, okay? It's difficult to visualize where this object's flowing in and around our scene. So there's a really great addition to our tool set. It's called motion paths. They're really easy to create, okay? If you have your item selected, so note that I got my flying saucer selected. Downstairs in our animation tools, we have a lovely option here called motion path, okay? Turn this on. Watch what happens. We're going to get a nice visualization. Add motion path, okay? Look at this. Now we're getting a really good visualization of what the flight path actually is, okay? This is helpful. The blue is the future, the green's the past, okay? So all of this stuff that's that kind of purpley blue, that's the future. We haven't gotten to that part of the animation yet. The green's the past. What about all those little dots going down the motion path itself?
That's every spot that the frame hits.
Yeah, it's every frame, right? It's every frame. So we're getting a really good sense of how many frames and how fast and how slow the speed of our object is based on how many frames are in that area. The white ones are what? Keyframes. Keyframes, okay? The colored ones are just timeline frames. So, at the moment, I want to go in. It's like, maybe I don't like that path, or really what I want to change is some of this stuff over in here. I just want to be able to go and, I just want to be able to go and click on it. No, wait, what? This is a moment of frustration for a lot of folks. Initially, we can't edit the motion path, okay? We're just visualizing it at the moment, okay? Check it out, though. If you have your motion path enabled and your item selected, return to your motion path options down here. And now, let's do edit motion path. With the edit function enabled, now, check it out. I can actually grab my keyframes and change the keyframed values, okay? Now, we're not changing these values in time. So we're not changing the speed, we're just changing the position. We can make some nice arcs, okay? Flatten some stuff out. Maybe this one goes over here. Make it sweep a little bit bigger, okay? I can already see that one's going to cause some problems, a little hiccup, okay? Oops, I clicked off it. Many apologies. There we go. This is starting to look pretty cool. However, one of the things that I would caution you when working with motion paths is to allow the edit and then turn the edit function off. Okay? This is a fast, easy way of completely destroying and screwing up your motion path, your animation. So I've gone ahead and made some adjustments here, but now I'm simply going to go back down into my motion path options and disable the edit functionality, which will make sure that I don't accidentally goof and make a change that I don't want to have. Yeah, that's looking a whole lot smoother now, the movements. Now the speed, we got to do something about the speed, because as right in here, the speed is just way too fast. As it comes around, let's see, that corner, I need to start spacing some of these things out. You can almost use the distribution of all of the frame dots on the motion path to kind of give you a good sense of how fast or how slow this object is moving, right? When you see a lot of dots, that object is moving pretty slow. When you just see a couple dots, that means it's moving lightning fast, right? Because the distance it's traveling between a couple frames is pretty intense, okay?
Can you edit the other dots as well?
No, because they're just representations of frames. That's all. Okay. Yeah. If you want to increase or decrease the dots, change the location of your keyframes on the timeline. Okay. Like I can see that once I get to this keyframe, there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's only 10 frames, as there should be, between those two keyframes. That's really fast. Okay. Let's fix it. And I'm just doing this by eye. It's kind of a feeling. I need some more animation frames here. Originally, I thought this was going to be a 6-second animation. I was totally wrong, okay? But it's part of our process. I'll make it a 10-second animation. We want to make this, or we want to have this revelation now. All right, let's turn off the visibility of my motion path because it very much is getting in the way now. And see what we got. Yeah, there's some work in there that I need to do, but at the very least, I'm on the right path. Literally.
How do I delete some of these? I kind of messed up.
Keyframes?
Yeah.
Yeah, just right-click on them in the timeline, choose Delete from the contextual menu that pops up. Okay, so this is the critical mistake that we're working with. We have every single item selected. We only want to have the flying saucer selected. Okay? That way, what we're seeing downstairs are just the keyframes that are on that item. Okay. That may be part of our problem. Maybe part of our problem. Yep, got a question?
Yeah, which one do I get rid of frames like cut or?
Delete?
Just
Or no, at the bottom of that list, there's delete. Yeah.
Okay,
All right. So now that I've started to establish the rough timing of all of this, I go on to the next pass. What's the next pass of animation? Yeah, rotation, right? We do the position keyframes, then we do the rotation keyframes, okay? And this is where we can go in, start having a whole lot of fun. Now, good school of thought when it comes to animating the next path. Place your rotation keyframes initially at the exact same location in your timeline as your position keyframes. That way they're all kind of synced up initially. It's going to make it just really easy to make sure that we're getting the right number of keyframes in the right spots. Then, once we get to the edit stage, okay, we'll start slipping them like we did with the position key in the dope sheet to get the timing that we're after. All right, so let's go ahead and start locking in some rotation. I'm going to key rotation there, and then maybe on this pose. Okay, there we go. All right, so in this pose, let's key it in and then figure out what it's going to look like. Maybe this is the beginning of a bank. And over here, it's going to bank the other direction, the other way. Let's see. Oh, we're going up too. So maybe on the previous keyframe, I should start getting this. Maybe I tip them up a little bit too. Excuse me. Yeah.
Is there some kind of like typing scheme kind of thing, or is that what motion paths do?
That's what motion paths are kind of do. There is onion skinning, okay, but that really motion path is kind of where we want to be for right now. Oops. Excuse me. Excuse me. Yeah, we're getting there. Yeah, I think I even need to continue. Now that I'm starting to put this in, I have a lot of tweaks in here that I want to perform, okay? Like I'm not real happy. Some of the keyframe targets that I'm hitting are not really hot, okay? But luckily for us, we're only working with a handful of keyframes at the moment, okay? And now's a really good chance to talk about how we can start to slip and slide all of our rotation keyframes to where we want them to go, okay? Because if you look at these sets of keyframes, okay, really I don't want to have, if you think about it, the spaceship's flying down, but I don't want him to start his rotation into the first bank until he's almost down to that first pylon, right? So I need to start slipping and sliding some of these keyframes to change the time at which the computer is interpolating. Oops, excuse me. Now I'm going to turn off the roll now, because Because look, now it's not going to start rotating until right about there. So we can start adjusting when we want things to rotate.
So you turn the pivot on for that?
Nope. No, no, no. I'm just animating rotation at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah. And then adjusting the position of all of those rotation keyframes in my dope sheet. Yeah, so I want it to rotate, and then I want it to finish its rotation. Maybe right around in here. Yeah, I'm not gonna. That's a good start. I still have a lot of work left to do on mine, but I know a lot of this is like watching paint dry, especially when someone else is doing it. But this is the power of our process, right? We animate the position, then we adjust the timing of those keyframes in the dope sheet. Then we animate rotation, then we adjust the timing of those keyframes in the dope sheet. Okay? We do this in passes as much as we can. Okay? We're not trying to animate everything initially, right? If we methodically step through it, it's easier. Maya, did you have a question? Do you have a question? No, I thought I saw your hand. I apologize. All right. Now, one of the things that's helpful to do from time to time is to put a camera movement on this, right? We always want to make sure that our animation is moving, or that there's movement within inside the animation itself. Everything should be movement. This is a movement-based art form. At times, especially when our animation begins, it feels very static, like all the animation is happening in the background. Well, what if we start to put very small, subtle camera movements in this, okay? Our cameras are just as much of an active player inside of how our audience consumes and feels about our animation as the actual animation objects themselves, okay? So check it out. Here's what I'm going to do. I want to animate my camera. Now, I've turned the visibility of my camera on. If yours is not on, if you don't see an icon for your camera, make sure you go into your viewport properties. Show cameras need to be enabled to see the little icon. And trust me, everything is easier when you see the icon, okay? And now, let me select it real fast. I don't think it's locked anymore. Nope. Now, I'm going to start making a small, subtle little camera movement. And I think the... Yeah, go ahead.
Right before you get going, where did you find show camera again?
So yours is on.
Oh, it's on.
Yeah,
Okay.
show cameras right up here.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's all good. All right. Camera movements for today, and actually next week, and even the week after, we're going to try to make as subtle and as simple as we can. Don't go all Michael Bay. Don't go all like shaky cam Cloverfield, right? Did you guys see the Cloverfield movie, the first Cloverfield movie? It's all like handheld, right? We want to make our camera movements smooth, simple, and consistent, right? If you don't, if they're all over the place, it's going to make your audience feel like they're going to throw up, okay? It's going to make them feel like they're on a roller coaster ride. No one wants to watch a roller coaster ride, okay? So by simply moving the camera, we can start to increase the effect that we're after. Now for me, my simple camera movement, just to give it a little bit more life and energy, is going to be a simple push-in, right? I'm going to dolly the camera back a little bit, which will then, in turn, kind of we're almost moving the camera to get this little pylon appear out of nowhere. It's going to make our scene feel bigger than it actually is. So let's do this. I know this is where I want, this composition is where I want my, my shot to end. So I'm going to go ahead and just lock in this position. Okay? And now, if I fire off the item selection, if I just do this, let's see what that does. Now that's only over the course of a couple frames. What if I did it over the course of 6 seconds? Turn off the transform tool. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Now, at every moment, there's at least a little bit of movement in every part of the frame. The first part, there's a lot of movement in the back. By adding that small little camera movement, there's always a little bit of movement at the front of the scene throughout the entirety of the animation as well. It kind of ensures that every pixel has movement in it, which is good. Yeah? Yeah, absolutely. I just had 2 keyframes, and I'll just stop my animation and go back in time a few moments. All right. Now my thinking was that this is my final composition where the camera is currently sitting, right? This is what I want my final composition to look like. So I'm going to preserve that by moving my playhead forward to like frame 40, okay? And then keying it to lock that composition in.
Okay, so once you got to the end of your frame, then you went back like a few frames.
Yeah.
Okay. Of where you wanted to cut off, pretty much. Is that right?
Yeah. I'm not even thinking about timing yet.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just trying to consider composition.
Okay.
I see people tracking the spaceship as it goes down, the slalom. I think that's really rad. That's a great idea. It's a great idea. So let me just finish the thought. This is what I want it to look like at the end. So let me capture it by keying it in. And then, on frame 1, I'm just simply going to move my guy in a little bit. If I play it now, it's going to be a real quick camera movement. I don't want it to be a quick camera movement. I think I want to move this keyframe down much later in my animation, and then just have it slowly kind of move. Just makes it feel a little bit more three-dimensional, right? We want our cameras to be active players in this entire animation. We just don't want them to be an attention grabber, okay? If the camera is doing all these crazy swoops and ups and downs, it's going to make your audience feel nauseous, okay? And then they're looking more at what the camera's doing and not more at what you've animated. Excuse me. Now, I have a tremendous amount of work left to do on my animation. I'm nowhere finished, right? There's one thing that I can't do is do high-quality animation and teach, talk, walk, and and entertain you guys all at the same time. It's like watching paint dry, and it requires a tremendous amount of foreground thought. So it's a tremendous amount of work left to be done on mine, but we're getting there, right? We're getting there. With 30 or 40 minutes of additional work, I'd be able to find my animation quite directly. Okay. Now, before we take a break, and before I let you guys start working on your lab, I wanted to talk about play blasts. Because right now, inside of Modo, our animation only exists inside of Modo, right? We want to get it out. We want to be able to share this with either maybe a much larger team, post it on Facebook, put it on our portfolio. I mean, we want to be able to take the work that we've completed and share it with our larger community at Hold. The way we've been doing this up until today is that we've just been rendering, right? Which can be, at times, a pretty lengthy procedure. However, what we can also do is make a play blast, an OpenGL capture of our animation, okay? Which is a near real-time process of getting our animations out and into a format that we can put in a number of different places, okay? And it's really, really easy. However, the first thing that we need to do is select the viewport that we want to export. Because really what's going to happen is that the computer is going to look at this viewport, it's going to advance my timeline one frame at a time, and basically kind of do like a screen capture, okay? That's the most rudimentary way I can possibly explain it. So I need to tell the computer which one of these viewports to export. Okay, I wanted to export this one. Notice that that viewport's got the gold dot in it. That means it's selected. And so once it's selected, we can start working. Okay. Now down here is where we can do all of our exporting from the viewports. Okay. So we have preview GL, and then we also have record GL. Okay. I like record GL because basically everything in the viewport gets turned off. Let me show you specifically what I'm talking about. I'm going to save this to my desktop. I'm going to call this Playblast Record. That way we know that this is the record GL version. We'll hit save. Now look what happens over there. See how all the viewport icons have turned off? Just takes a second. It's sitting on my desktop right now. There it is. There it comes. Aha! We even get a lovely frame counter. That's a great way to share our animations with a much larger group, right? We don't necessarily have to render everything, but we do need to get it out so we can showcase our work with other folks, okay? So this was the record function. Let's take a look at the alternative, because a lot of folks, they'll get a little confused. Like, what's the difference between capture and record? Okay. Record GL is the best. Don't fall into the preview GL world. Okay. The preview GL world isn't necessarily going to give you the best reproduction of your timeline. It tries to capture it as fast as it can, and I've had more problems with the preview GL function than the record GL function. In addition, one of the big differences, and it looks like they've turned it off in this version of Modo, which is good. For the longest time, the preview GL would give you all of your on-screen menus and what have you. You'd see like the wireframe outlines. You'd actually see like tools and things active in the background. Looks like they've turned the functionality of that off, and we're just getting our viewport. So here's my suggestion to you: always use record GL. Okay. Don't do half or quarter. You're not saving yourself anything. Okay. I don't even know why that's an option. It's like record half the size. Why would you? Why would you do that? It's like, I don't understand. It's like, then because what it's taking the size of this viewport here, right? So if your viewport's gigantic like this, okay, you're going to get a gigantic QuickTime movie, okay? If it's real small, like this, okay, that's what you're going to get. So be mindful. It's an absolute what you see is what you get. Yeah, look at this one. Yeah, that's what it did, because that viewport was teeny tiny, right? Yeah. Whenever I do a record GL, I try to make the size of my viewport match the aspect ratio of my shot. So I actually kind of do this. I try to make it pretty big, okay? But then if I can, I try to get the width. So there's very little, if not any of this black ghosted wireframe of the outside of my boundaries. I try to get close. That's probably it right there. That way I know it's like what I see is 100% the aspect ratio of the final animation. But it's nice and big. I like big. My eyes are getting old and tired, so big is muy importante. Check it out. There it is. And that's good. For a lot of the things that we're going to be doing in this class, this is going to be just fine, right? When we get to the character animation component of this course, a lot of our day-to-day work is just going to be looking at your play blasts, right? Because that way we can just open up the QuickTime movies, hit go, we're up and running. Okay? Great way to share your work too if you haven't rendered it entirely. Just make a play blast, put it on YouTube, you're on your way. Dominic, you have a question?
I didn't follow what you were talking about with that preview.
The preview, yeah. So the big picture idea is just make sure that you select the viewport that you want to export. Okay? You know it's selected because there's a gold dot in the upper left-hand corner of that viewport. And then down in your timeline, we have an option here called Record GL. Down here in the bottom right. And that's going to fire off a render, fire off a capture, and save it as a QuickTime file.
So pretty much in the process of keying, doing the regular, even all the other frames, wherever I place my saucer, it's going to already highlight down at the bottom in green with the green dots of the position, the place I am, and all that. And all I have to do is just click on the green dots to record it, or
To key it in, is that what you're saying?
in,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm sorry,
The
Mark.
first one, you key the first time, right?
Yeah.
On the first frame. And then every subsequent key is going to automatically be created when you advance your playhead
Yeah.
and then move your object.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. One final thing while I have everyone here. Let's chat for a second, and then we'll take a break and we'll start working on our lab, okay? Our homework this week is going to involve a really fun, excuse me, you went the wrong place, a really fun project file. So let's return to Canvas in the week 3 section. Motobot landing. I've given you guys a fun little project file. Here it is. Let's take a look at it. Oh, sorry. I gotta go retrieve it from my downloads folder. All right. So here's our Motobot. Okay, this is our first kind of introduction and exposure to a control rig. Almost every animation that we're going to be making going forward is going to include some sort of control rig in it, right? We want to have these really crazy complex models, but we don't want to really have to be responsible for managing all the geometry. We want to have a little bit of a machine, a little toy, if you will, that we can play with and see all these different parts and piece moves, right? You'll see this with characters in the not too distant future, right? You're never actually going to be grabbing the geometry. You're going to be animating a whole series of control points, which will in turn move the geometry. It's kind of like a puppet, okay? Let's take a look at what these control rigged elements look like. There are a number of them in here that's pretty cool. So we got to be in item mode. So I'm going to hit the 5 key on my keyboard. And if you click on the control one, check it out. We're going to get this little, oops, I'm all zoomed in. Sorry, it's wigging out. You get this little form, which has a whole series of channels that have been paired to move certain objects and certain components of our little robot here. So these are sliders. Okay, you can see the start and end value of that slider. Simply left-clicking and dragging on the words is fine. You don't necessarily have to click on the dots. But now you can see that one, yeah, that's cool. That one's opening and closing the little hatches. That's its function. Yeah, so you can like, sound effects are required, right? Gotta have sound effects. Life is so much better with sound effects. So you can have it all folded up, and then have them come out. That's pretty rad. I think these are supposed to be rockets down here at the bottom. And let's see. Yeah, they open up too. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. This is a fun little, whoop, that was a little too much fun for me. So we can start going in and rotating this around, getting a cool like angle there. Let's see, here's another one, the front motor hatch. Oh, it's down there. And that can come out. And then the fan blades move a little bit too. So there's a lot of really great opportunity in here to make a cool animation with this fun little toy that we have. Okay. Keying these little control points is really, really easy. Okay. It's actually the same process that we've been going through the entirety of the semester. So let me find front motor hatch. Okay. So front motor hatch. Okay. hit the S key. Okay? That's actually going to put a keyframe on every single control surface, okay? Which is fine. You can always go back in and delete them after the fact. You go forward, front motor hatch. There we go. They open and close. Now, I think if I remember correctly, if you turn off, let me go back in time, hit undo a couple steps, many apologies. I think it's these first radio buttons on the forms, these guys over here. Yeah, these turn, this is kind of like a selection thing. So if I just wanted to keyframe the front motor hatch, then, nope, I'm wrong. Is that it right there? No, that's just changing the value. There's a way to just keyframe just this one thing, but clearly I'm having a senior moment here and I'm not able to remember. But just hitting the S key will get you going. That keyframes all the channels on this form. There are some other things in here. If you want to dismiss the form, just hit the escape key. You're on your way. There are some other functionality in the rig that I want you guys to be aware of. Also play around with the wings. Okay, that's kind of cool. This big purple ring here in the center is what you're going to be moving to make the entire spaceship fly. Okay, so it's a fun little rig. I think you're going to have a good time with this one. Okay, yeah.
Wait, how did you open the control keys? The black box?
Black box. Oh, these things right here.
Oh.
Just click on them once. It'll open up the form. Make sure you're in item mode. Ah, and Sue, what computer number are you, Sue? Top right-hand corner, student what? 17. Because I want to show you something. This happens frequently. Let's find 17. Okay. Sue actually has his entire form up and on his screen, but for whatever reason, and this happens, come on, remote desktop, work with me. All right, there we go. Okay, cool. Check it out. He actually, it's all there. They're just being cut off down here at the bottom. If you were to left click and drag on the top of the form, yeah, there they all are. Somehow I just got docked down and all those channels were getting cut off by the interface. Okay? So if you don't see everything, just make sure that that form is, in a spot where there's not a whole lot of stuff around it. All right. So for your homework this week, we're going to take everything that we learned about the slalom. And, oops, I apologize. Where's my landing pad? Let me turn my landing pad on. You can see that I've provided you guys with a landing pad. So it's your job to go in and figure out how to compose the shot and make an animation of this little Motobot landing like a helicopter on your little landing pad. Okay? This is going to take a little bit to render. There's some really great materials in here. Okay? So just be aware of that. It's going to be a cool animation when it's done. Okay? In addition, one other thing that I want you guys to enable is the shadow catcher. Excuse me. The shadow catcher will capture your ground shadows for you too. Okay? If you wanted to go in and change the environment, add more, go for it. I have no problem with that. At the end of the day, this animation is just all about making this little robot land on this little landing pad. We'll talk a little bit more about some of the ideas that you'll want to make sure you employ when we come back from the break. Sound good? Yeah? All right, let's take a break. Sure, what's up? I want to see if YouTube will flag today's live stream as including copyrighted material. I'm test my luck, see if YouTube, the YouTube lawyers are like, no, you can't monetize this. You can't make money off of our own videos, right? Okay, anyways, you'll see what I'm talking about here in a minute. All right, so as we were talking before the break, our big homework assignment this week is to make our little Motobot land, right? But we need to practice our craft a little bit. Even though it's a fun little toy that's got all these great gadgets and gadgets on it that allow us to do a lot of things, okay? We still need to animate with reference as our foundation, right? So, in my imagination, this little Motobot is kind of like a helicopter, right? That's a good place to begin. Helicopter's pretty big, right? Pretty heavy. The little Motobot that we're going to be working with is kind of similar in weight and mass. So it's a good place to kind of begin our kind of motion study, okay, as to what these things look like. And seriously, I just went onto YouTube and just typed in helicopter landing, and I got a couple videos here that I think will be a good starting point. Good starting point, and that's the thing to underscore, okay? Here's one of an Apache Longbow helicopter. And the thing that kind of struck me about this is its starting pose. Look how far away it is. It's way off there in the background. And let's really take a look at how this object moves in real space with real gravity and physics applied to it to get to its landing. Because I think it's going to land like on this concrete pad here. It's going to squish all of these tourists. Or not. That was very disappointing. Okay, here we go. All right. Okay, SJVC, go away. All right. So how fast is this thing moving? Not very fast, right? Makes sense. This is a big, hulking, heavy piece of metal, okay? The fastest way to start to remind our audience that this is heavy and it's just a huge chunk is to slow down all of its movement, both its translation in space, but look at its rotation. Is it like zipping around real fast? No, it's slowly orbiting, couple little small, smoothed out bobbles on the roll. It makes it feel like it's pretty heavy. Another thing that I want you to look at as the helicopter lands is that it's rotating on all three axes at the exact same time, okay? The entirety of the craft is moving, okay? And kudos for whoever organized this to allow all of these men and women to stand this close to a helicopter landing. That's pretty brave. Okay. And the pilot. This is, you know. Okay, touchdown, but as it stopped, get some rotor wash there. Yeah, so it kind of touched the wheels, came down, and then it did a kind of as it really kind of just settled onto the ground. That's a good little micro detail that maybe we can add to our animations, right? It touches the ground, but then it really doesn't settle until it kind of, you know, equalizes its mass on our environment. That's cool. All right, here's another one that I found. This one's of a Black Hawk helicopter. Excuse me. Same idea. Look at the composition of this. You can almost see that the helicopter is bent at an angle a little bit, right? Look at the tail. It's not perfectly horizontal to the plane of the ground. It's coming in at an angle. Look at the angle of attack, right? That could be a cool detail to add, especially with the little rockets that we have at the bottom. Tips back, the rockets start to push and propel it forward a little bit, so it starts to slow down and equalize. Yeah, we can take some inspiration from this. And then a dude jumps out. I think we should always be drawing from reality on everything that we do, especially with, you know, a hard surface object like a spaceship. You know, we should kind of echo and mirror some of these ideas. And then just because I'm crazy and I like fun videos like this, this goes to show you the skill of some of these pilots out there. That's nuts, right? Here, let's land a helicopter on a surface that is the most unstable surface on the, you know, look at this guy. This guy's a ninja.
Wow. Just goes for it.
Yeah, he just goes for it.
The helicopter.
I've seen some other ones at sea where these helicopters. Oh wait, we may see another one. I didn't know it was a compilation video.
10 minutes.
Yeah.
Helicopter landing.
It's a good video, right? It's a lot of good reference. We want to arm ourselves with reference before we even start. I think for me, what I draw a lot of inspiration from is that it's moving along all three axes as it gets close. It's pretty stable at an angle, then as it starts getting close to the ground, it's as if the pilot's working against some wind shears or something, maybe some forces that are pushing it around. When the object gets super close to the camera, we're going to want to see a lot of those micro details coming across the surface. These pilots are pretty amazing. I saw one video where the pilot tried to land the helicopter, I think maybe 4 or 5 times, because the decks were just going up and down. It was amazing. Is it in this one? How fun would it be if it's actually in this one? I like the pitching deck ones. That's what they're called. Also, look for character moments. Now, that's a big, old helicopter landing on a very small deck. With these ideas in mind, whoa! That's nuts, right? He almost landed on one wheel, and then he recovered at the last second. It's crazy. Now, with this stuff in mind, if we go back into Moto and take a look at what we're working with here, you know, this model gives us a lot of opportunity to do some really fun things like that, right? Specifically, I mean, check it out. Oh, I have 2 different viewports. Let me get rid of this. You know, you have a lot of really great opportunity for character in our little Motobots, right? The wings are a great opportunity, especially as the object gets closer. Maybe you can start seeing some of the wings go like psh, 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 like the little trim, like they're just trying to trim it out a little bit to get the, you know, the wings are always moving, and then all of a sudden, he lands, okay? Imagine maybe there's a pilot on the inside of this thing that's trying to land it, right? How is he or she operating the controls on the inside of the spacecraft, and how do we see kind of that thought process kind of unfold in the movement of all the other objects on the machine itself, right? You know, really put some thought into this, okay? Grab the controls here. Especially when it comes to, let's see, yeah, especially when it comes to stuff like this, right? It's like, when do the legs come out, right? How much are those legs going to be an influence on the animation, right? You know, is it going to be, do they open up the doors early on and the legs are out, kind of adding those stabilizers, the little rocket thrusters to stabilize it landing? Or do they pop out right at the end and they come down? Something for you to figure out. It's a great opportunity for character and interest, okay? Experiment a little bit with this, okay? Don't handcuff yourself to the first idea. Never swing at the first pitch, as I'm famous for saying, okay? Ideas, they need to grow and be watered, okay? Look at reference. It really does help, okay? Another thing that you'll definitely want to make sure you do when it comes to working inside this animation is, remember, arcs, 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 arcs. If I see anyone's animation look like this, right? If this is the composition, if I see anyone do this, where bot starts over there, here's our landing pad, okay? If I see this, failing you, okay? I'm going to fail you on this assignment, okay? We want to have arcs, right? It creates this good sense of depth. Maybe if we start here, maybe it swings around like this, okay? Or maybe the arc would be something more like this, where he starts, and then goes up, and then down, okay? Or have it go the other way, right? But we always want to have arcs, arcs, arcs in all of our movements.
I got a question. When I was like animating
Okay?
Like, how does it look?
Way too fast.
Yeah.
Way too fast. We're going to slow it all down, right? And Thomas just showed me an animation that he's doing for his little slalom. And the other thing that we want to try to do as much as we can here is smooth out our movement arcs, right? Don't want to have any kind of jittery bumps or banging into keyframes, okay? Smooth it all out. Those motion paths help, right? Because we have the tangent handles on our motion path that allow us to make nice, smooth curves versus very pointed, direct linear animations, okay? Smooth it all out, okay? Nice, flowy curves. It takes a while to kind of get into that space where you get everything kind of smoothly transitioning from one place to another, all right? But they really do help in making some high-quality animations. Now, with your Motobot, you're going to be doing a full-blown render on this thing, so budget some time. This is a good, high-quality little model here, okay? I chose this model to give you a great opportunity to have something that could potentially go onto your portfolio, okay? So, I mean, there's some good stuff, including the motion blur and all that jazz in here. This is going to take some time, so make sure that over the next 7 days you budget some time for the render. I've just fired off a still here, and don't be seduced by it going really fast, because once it gets over to the bot, it's going to go a whole lot slower. Okay. Let's see. Also, if you choose to put a camera movement, excuse me, if you choose to put a camera movement on this animation, great idea, right? Make it real subtle. Okay. Maybe twist the camera so you can see the landing pad rotate ever so slightly. Don't make it real jarring. Make it really simple. Okay. We want our audience to focus on the bot, not the camera movement, right? We do that quite easily by having the camera movements be really smooth, really simple, and very kind of minimal. So this is going to take what, a minute or maybe 2 per frame. So this is going to be a good animation. Okay, so just make sure you're budgeting some time. This is going to be the longest render you've had. Specifically, if you look at the assignment details, let's go back to the bot landing. Okay, 10 seconds. I don't want it to be longer than 10 seconds on this one. Okay, no shorter, no longer. 10 seconds on the dot. Okay, so you have a 10-second sandbox to play in. Point being, don't be in a hurry to land your spacecraft, okay? You have 10 seconds to play with. We don't want to finish our animation in the first 2 seconds, and then have 8 seconds of no movement, right? So start plotting and planning how you're going to use that 10-second kind of sandbox to get the result thereafter, all right? Plan it out. 10 seconds on the dot on this one, okay? Others will be longer, others will be shorter. Other animations you'll get to pick and choose, but this one I want 10 seconds, okay? And like I said, make it epic and make it awesome, all right? It's going to be pretty cool. This is supposed to be a fun one, so make sure you have some fun with it, okay? This is supposed to be kind of a cool little animation.
So the spaceship itself, does it land with its
I don't know.
engines out?
I don't know. However you want it to land. No, it really is. It's yours, Dominic. However you want it to land. Yeah. I don't have any problem with that. Yeah, maybe he's a bad pilot, right? Maybe he tries and all of a sudden he crashes or something, right? Maybe he's flying over and he forgets to turn the engines on and he cuts the engine, boom, he falls. I mean, you can do so much with it, right? It could be a lot of fun. Yeah, maybe that should be the challenge. Maybe we'll do that in lab next week. Trying to make it crash, right? Yeah. Figure out a way to creatively crash your bot. All right, are there any other questions about the homework in the lab? All right, so we got about an hour left in class. Let's get a head start on it, okay? Sound good? Let me turn the live stream off. I'll give you a hand.
Did you want us to render the lab and all that stuff too? Or
Lab, no.